Hello Street Fight Secret subscribers. So thanks very much to those of you who contributed to answering the question of, if you fear verbal conflict, what is it in particular that freaks you out about it? Do you think it's an unreasonable fear? Do you think it's a reasonable fear? We had a ton of really good answers on the last YouTube video, so thanks for that, and a load of really good answers up on streetfightsecrets.com. So what I did was I looked at all the different answers, and you can see there's an obviously recurring theme, is that at some level inside of people, they seem to be operating from certain rules about how they think they should conduct themselves in the world. And we all have these, and these are called unconscious rules. What these are like your coordinates for your map of reality. They dictate how you think it's appropriate to behave in the world based on your belief system, based on your self-image, and based on your experience. So what it seems to broadly fall down into is two major categories of people, and there's crossover. Most people have elements of both. People are either noticing that they're really the amount of anxiety they have about arguing is disproportionate, totally unreasonable, and like the original questioner who asked me this, that kicked this whole question off, is they notice that they seem to be targeted for verbal abuse and narcissistic style bullying and vampirism and exploitation more than other people. Well, those are the two major categories. Either disproportionate anxiety about verbal arguments, or just noticing that you seem to be getting targeted for exploitation and for verbal abuse more than most other people seem to be. That was the two major categories. So I looked at it and said, okay, how do I actually stop this? So instead of bringing my martial arts head to the scenario, the self-protection instructor is a technician. So it's like, you give me a problem, I give you a solution. And what I've done in the past, the mistake I've made in the past, is all I've really shown you to do is how to do verbal conflict more skillfully and with more confidence. But that doesn't actually tell you why you're disproportionately anxious about verbal conflict or why you seem to be getting targeted more than other people. So I brought the psychology head to this question, to this whole issue, and I've come up with an answer. I've come up with an answer that I think is conclusive. And I'm surprised I never came across it before, but I never asked the question that way before. I actually asked a different question this time, which was, why does this even happen? What's the root cause? Psychology is all about root causes. So I got to the root cause, and I found something very interesting. I found that there are certain very common personality traits that people have, including myself, that when you have these traits, you're wide open to exploitation. You're going to be very fearful of engaging in verbal conflict, and you're going to attract people to you who will want to engage you in verbal conflict. These same people will be attracted to you for the same reasons to target you for crime. So it's not about being a kung fu master. It's actually about being a healthy, sane, self-assertive person. Criminal predator scumbags will target you on the basis of a lack of self-assertiveness and a lack of self-esteem. Why? Because criminal predator scumbags aren't out there trying to test their boxing skills with the biggest, toughest looking guy on the block, are they? They're just trying to get what they want. Same with exploiters and narcissists. They're attracted to people who they think will be easy prey. So then when I looked into it, I was like, wow, there's 15 traits here, and I score highly for 5 of them. Now, if you score highly for any of them, you will have a disproportionate anxiety in the face of verbal arguments, and you will be the target for exploitation. Now, I don't have a disproportionate anxiety in the face of verbal arguments at all. I feel about as anxious about it as I feel I should do, and there is a part of me that's quite sadistic because I've been doing this for a long time that almost relishes. I'm that kind of guy. I relish verbal arguments because I know that I'm quite good at it, and if somebody can actually get a handle on me verbally, I'm pretty impressed. I'm not even angry, I'm just kind of impressed right now. So that doesn't really bother me. I don't really have that kind of same level of fear of humiliation. But I do have a problem with being exploited and with being able to be calm and assertive on the door and then being a total pushover in the home, especially with girlfriends. I have a bad track record of just never saying no. Now, what does this mean? So what we have, for those of you who have a disproportionate fear of verbal arguments, and those of you who just have noticed that you seem to be a target more consistently than other people, and the crossover for those of us who are in between the two, there are these 15 personality traits that you must identify in yourself, and then you need to realize, you need to come to understanding, these personality traits then become an unconscious rule. Let me give you some of the personality traits, and you see what you think, and if you're like me, you'll probably have a little bit of a wry smile as you realize you've got these problems. So these came from 2 books on dealing with bullies. One's called A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, but I'll give you the full references in the more information bar below. Let me give you 3 good examples of traits of people who struggle to do self-assertiveness, who struggle disproportionately to argue, and who frequently find themselves the targets of verbal abuse. Number 1, naivety. Do you have naivety? Naivety in this context means that the individual, the client, struggles to understand and believe that other people out there in the world are really mean. What this usually manifests as is if you've ever heard somebody say, or if you ever heard yourself say the words, "I can't believe how mean she is. I can't believe how cruel he is being. I can't believe anybody would be that deceptive, underhanded, mean-spirited," whatever. I've said this loads of times. And it's a kind of neurotic naivety that is not reasonable in intelligent adults. Like, you know, let's flatter ourselves that we're both, you know, intelligent adults. It's not reasonable to walk around in the world going, "Hey, I didn't know people were this mean," right? And despite massive amounts of evidence to the contrary and experience of dealing with some very nasty characters, I still continue to have this unconscious rule in my head, which is everybody's basically good. You shouldn't judge people. You shouldn't, it's like being a good boy. I first noticed this in doing therapy work with female clients. Massive neurotic tendency amongst many of my female clients to be a good girl. They're obsessed and their lives are crushed in by this idea of being a good girl. But you have it, guys have it as well. You want to be a good boy. Now this comes down to probably, without wanting to pontificate too much in a Freudian style, because it matters but not that much, it's probably an over-authoritarian parenting style. They've done too much to make you too obedient, and everything is, your whole value is about how obedient you are. And that then makes you naive because you don't want to judge. Judging people is then a crime. Knowing that is very freeing. Knowing that you can go in and change that unconscious rule. Sometimes I have to judge people as the flaming titheads they clearly are, because otherwise you're going to end up being the victim of a flaming tithead, and that's not helpful to anybody in a psychological or in a self-protection context. And this really is a really interesting, exciting area. You can probably tell I'm giddy about it. Because this is where emotional self-protection and physical self-protection cross over, and this is the essence. If you can understand that what you've been searching for in martial arts training, beyond the fact that it's cool and it's interesting and it gives you a good workout and it's a hobby and everything else, for most of us is we realised there was a need inside of ourselves. We realised we weren't defending ourselves properly, and what we actually needed to learn was self-assertiveness, but what we learned instead was martial arts, which is an okay tool, but not necessarily the best tool for the job. Self-assertiveness training is the right tool for the job. Let me give you another trait. Let's see if this resonates for you. Another trait that I thought was very applicable to myself. I'll give you the traits that apply to me first, and I'll give you a couple of other ones. Being excessively conscientious. Being excessively conscientious. This is a personality trait that will make you fear. It's not really fear. What's actually happening is that you're hitting up against an unconscious rule. If you break an unconscious rule that's been indoctrinated and hypnotized and conditioned into you since childhood, your body will fight with you, your brain will fight with you. So the shaky voice and the trembling hands is actually you fighting your conditioning. You've got one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brakes, if you like. That's the best metaphor I could come up with in the moment. So it's not even fear, it's an incongruence. And people have reported to me almost feeling like they want to cry in the face of verbal conflict, especially when it's injustice. And I'm like, If you very suddenly and very quickly find yourself going into a state of emotional helplessness to the point where you want to cry, then that is something that has come about through childhood trauma. You're regressing. You're momentarily regressing back to being a kid. Overconscientiousness. See, I'm too excited. I'm getting carried away with myself. Overconscientiousness means, in this context, I give your opinion more value than my opinion. And in verbal conflict, your argument gets its day in court. My argument gets a 3 minutes and is a footnote. If I'm overconscientious, if I'm neurotically overconscientious in this context, I will allow you to ask me any question, to say whatever you want, and I will sit and I will patiently listen, and you get to do your thing, and I really don't assert my right to be treated equally. And because you're dealing with flaming titheads who don't care about justice and rightness, they just want to exploit you, they go, thanks very much, I'll take that from you. And then you are unable to deal with the verbal conflict because it's not nice to judge people, it's not nice to not give their argument its day in court, and you are unwilling to assert yourself, or basically you're incapable of, because you've written into your brain software this unconscious rule, their argument, their point of view is more important than mine. Where does this come from? In my case, the childhood root of this is that I felt like in my family life and through school that a lot of times people were not arguing in a way that was fair, and it wasn't rational. And I had this loathing and contempt for people who couldn't argue in a way that was just. I know it sounds a bit poncy, but kids have a very strong sense of justice, and most of the abuse and the damage that is done is when they feel that something is not fair, and you'll often hear kids say that. They'll usually, as they're crying, say it's not fair, because it's, their sense of justice might be wrong. By the way, they don't have a strong sense of justice, and they're right. What they want is what they think is just. That's the strong impulse. So I then created a rule. Well, I don't want to be like those guys. I don't want to be like them. So I must always be even-handed, always be fair, and always be rational. Sounds like a good rule, right? If you're sat there right now going, yeah, that's the way it should be, you are guilty of the crime of naivety, because the people that you're dealing with, especially in a potentially criminal scenario, they don't give a fuck about fair. And when I say criminal, I now want you to think it's any form of exploitation. It could be a mugging in the street, or it could be a mugging in the home. It could be your girlfriend or your wife ripping you off. It could be your husband, taking you for granted, doing things by a different system of rules that applies to him but that doesn't apply to you, where you've got total injustice in the scenario. So another really, really good one that I saw, and it made me laugh, is just simply being addicted to the approval of others. What a sucker I've been for this over the years. And again, if you're addicted to the approval of others, it's probably because you were never taught to self-approve. You probably were raised in a negative environment where you had a lot of very harsh criticism, and you have a weak sense of self. That is kind of one of the traits. They call it an external locus of control. And I get into that on this course. But if you have an addiction to the good opinion of others, then you have an unconscious rule which says, I must foster other people's love and good feeling and goodwill. Well, that sounds lovely, doesn't it? It sounds very nice, but imagine what a weak position that puts a human being in when they operate from the rule that I need to make people love me. Well, then you can't be honest, because not everything about you is going to be the kind of thing that instantly gives the other person the gratification that makes them love you in that moment straight away. So it actually makes you quite fake. It makes you a fake nice guy. And this is where it gets a bit brutal and it's quite difficult. This course that I've created, the self-assertiveness course, I wouldn't recommend doing it if you like staying inside your psychological comfort zones, because it's pretty painful. I mean, I've found it challenging, but the reward is a massively increased ability to assert yourself and to deal with abusive, exploitative types at levels you'd never have dreamed possible before, and it's all unconscious. You don't have to consciously think, what's the principle I'm using now? What's the technique I'm using now? Is this an NLP reframe? None of that. It's all unconscious, because we can actually go in Now that I've identified these 15 personality traits, we just attack them. We just go, okay, well, let's heal. Each one of these personality traits represents a psychic wound, and a wound in the unconscious that is postulating and bleeding at the psychic level. When I say psychic, I mean in the original meaning of the word psychic, not in a weird way, at a psychological level. And predator mindset types, narcissistic abuser types, bullies, people who like to exploit, they smell the blood in the water and then they come for you. And where do they get in? Well, they attack the wound that is open first. So it might just be in one area of your life, but if there's somebody there who can attack it, they will. So if you're addicted to the approval of others, you're very, very open for exploitation. So if you identify that, and on this self-assertiveness course, you know, that it's very much about overcoming people-pleaser addiction. And look, you might think people-pleaser addiction doesn't apply to you or it's not relevant to verbal conflict. If you are a people-pleaser, and I've done some qualitative research that wouldn't pass psychological standards, but locally, amongst friends and amongst some clients, I've done some qualitative research. I haven't found anybody yet who scores for less than 3 of these 15 personality traits that I give you on this course. That means everybody is a little bit open to being abused, a little bit open to being resistant to verbal conflict, a little bit resistant at the unconscious level to being able to assert themselves. So if you can identify these things, you can make yourself safer. We can heal these things. So let's take an example. Let's say that you have people pleaser syndrome. You're addicted to the good approval of others. How do you deal with that? Well, firstly, you say, I have this problem, and it is a problem. You can't overcome an addiction unless you admit that you've got the problem, right? So you go, you know what? I think I have this. I think I have a little bit of people pleaser addiction. I think I am addicted to the good approval of others, and I think it leaves me open to exploitation. I think it's a problem. So that's the first step. Observation, orientation, decision, and action, the old OODA loop. And this is a context in which it is somewhat useful. So you say, observation, I do have this problem. Orientation, there is something that must be done about this problem. Decision and action. What is the thing that needs to be done about this problem? Having identified an unconscious rule, how do we then alter that? What tools have we got to alter the unconscious? Let's say the unconscious rule is, I must always make people love me. I must never do anything that makes people not want to love me, right? Let's say that's the unconscious rule. It's just a piece of code. It's script in the software. So what do? You just change the script. How do you do that? I think the best ways of doing it, the 3 major tools we've got, hypnosis, affirmations, and the superstate concept. So the hypnosis thing would be, you would go into an altered state of consciousness, a relaxed state of consciousness, and you would repetitively suggest to yourself an affirmation that would be something like, it is okay and it is necessary for me to sometimes do things that don't necessarily mean everybody is going to love me for it. It is okay and necessary for me as an adult human being to sometimes take an action that will not be popular with other people. This is one of the issues that comes up time and again when I'm counselling people and it relates to parenting. You can't be your kid's best mate, sadly, though that might feel good to the self. Oh, I've got a really good relationship with my kid. You're letting the kid down because the kid needs guidance. The child needs boundaries, and they need you to enforce those boundaries. Now, you can be on good terms with your kid, don't get me wrong, but if it's your top priority to be friends with them, you're letting them down. Your top priority must be to be the best parent you can be, to be the best guide you can be. Where is this relevant for those of us like myself who don't have kids yet? You've got to parent yourself. You've got to negotiate with your own inner child. Now, if this is too fluffy for you, I'm sorry, move along. Go and learn another eye gouging technique. Go and learn how to palm the pads even harder than ever before. You'll still be a wimp. You'll still be a pushover. Go and do more push-ups. Go and lift a bigger fucking weight. You'll still be a doormat. You'll still get used. Do you want to know why? And I'll give you one of the greatest revelations for me putting this course together. Your ability to fight, the context of the skill set of your ability to fight has nothing to do with your ability to ask a waiter to change your food because it's not very nice, to tell your girlfriend that she's acting like a dick and she needs to stop, to tell your kids, no, you can't have a peanut butter and M&M and ice cream sandwich again. It's not good for your nutrition. To be able to even assert yourself with your own self. I think that over the years, in some ways, I became such a pushover, I couldn't even say no to me. But you say, but you go on the door and you tell people no all night. Yeah, no. And in business, you can tell people no. Yeah, right. But it's a skill set specific to a context. The closer it is to home, the more personal it is, the more it's going to feed straight back into your childhood and the structure of your reality that comes straight from your childhood. And so the sicker it's going to be if you had a sick childhood, and most people did. You know, what's the poem? They fuck you up, your mum and dad. Most people had a neurotic, difficult childhood that put things into the child's brain that's not good for them. So you even have to parent yourself. So your ability to do push-ups and lift weights and palm pads and be super aggressive and scream and shout, it becomes the most impotent display of nothing but adult role play. We're just playing games there because you still don't have the ability to walk up to another person, look them in the face and say, listen, I don't want you to do that anymore. It upsets me. Please stop. Or even stronger than that, I am not going to allow you to continue to do what you're doing. End of story. You're not doing it anymore. See, if you can't do that, what difference does it make how hard you can punch? Now, here's another thing that is major revelation territory for me as well. What if, sickly, weirdly, the better you get at fighting and the more able you are to physically fight, the worse you get at verbal arguments? Why would that happen? Because something else is occurring at the unconscious level. You're now becoming aware that, you'll never think it consciously, but you'll feel it. And your feelings, your gut instincts, your intuition, listen to them, because that's your unconscious talking to you, and it's wise. Your unconscious is saying to you, dude, you're getting really good at punching the fuck out of people. How is this appropriate in 2013? You know, if somebody dings your car by mistake, and your only response is to jump out and throttle them and smash their head in, that's bad. That actually puts you in more danger, not less. Because we live in a symbolic environment. There are no saber-toothed tigers. There are no, tribal style wars where we go and pick up clubs and beat the fuck out of the other tribe and steal their resources and steal their women, which is what you've evolved for, which is what I've evolved for. That's what we represent. We live in a symbolic world now. If somebody dings my car and they get out with a bit of an attitude on and go, you fucking prick, you drove into me. I'm like, no dude, you drove into me. And they have an attitude and they get in my face. A lot of people nowadays feel so safe in civilized society that they strut around super cocky. Nobody's ever challenged them, nobody's ever put them in there, and they'll get in your face. Let's imagine somebody gets in your face and your response is what? C-grip, eye gouge, headbutt, knee to the jaw, throw him on the floor and stamp on him. Okay, you just want to fight. Well done you, mate. You just won a fight, if indeed that even is a fight. Now what happens to you? A shitstorm. A shitstorm. Do you want to be walking around with a criminal record? How do you think you do in prison? Do you relish the prospect of being in jail? Do you like the idea of giving up 5, 6, 7 years of your life as an adult and being told when to go to sleep, when to wake up, where you can and can't go? Where can you go? Nowhere, because you're in fucking prison. These are things that, even if you've not thought it through consciously, your unconscious is going, okay, what are we doing here? So, counterintuitively, the better you get at being able to brawl, it's not the worse you get at verbal conflict, but the more resistance you will experience to get into verbal conflict, because you know the consequences could be awful. So, what I've done is I've taken these 15 personality traits and I've taken these rules and I've put together a new course called Self-Assertiveness Training, How to Overcome People Pleaser Syndrome. If you are consistently being targeted for verbal abuse, you're suffering from People Pleaser Syndrome. I'm not judging you, I'm not criticising you, I do too, okay? I'm the same as you on this one. If you really struggle to deal with verbal arguments, but you know that there's no physical danger and it's an unreasonable fear, you suffer from People Pleaser Syndrome, or some of the traits thereof. Anyway, I've created this course for you, Self-Assertiveness course. There's 2 packs here. One is a big pack that is anti-bullying tactics, verbal conflict 2.0, verbal conflict solo drill, state management, instant confidence, and this new self-assertiveness thing. So if you've not received any of those items or tutorials before, and you want to throw as much technique and as many techniques and drills and information and insights at the problem as possible and eradicate it for good, go and get the big pack. If you've got some of those tutorials already, then just get the self-assertiveness training pack, which is 2 1-hour-long videos. It's kind of long, I know, but the psychology of this is not surface. The psychology of this, I know I'm very excited about this, so I'm being maybe a bit giddy. Maybe I'm being a little bit too light-hearted about all of this, but it is a little bit heavy, and you do need to get into what your self-perception is, who you think you are as a human being, how you were raised by your parents, what they were teaching you to do, and then literally going in and altering the software at an unconscious level. It's pretty deep work. So there's 2 1-hour-long videos that guide you in doing that, and then there's a 30-minute audio that is like a guided meditation, hypnosis style thing that has a lot of affirmation work in it. And what this will allow you to do is to create a super state, a new persona that is specifically and explicitly designed to allow you to handle verbal conflict in a calm, friendly, spat everywhere then, a calm, friendly, calm, friendly and assertive fashion. There is no reason for verbal conflict, for self-assertiveness to be a drama every time you do it. Your emotion does not have to spike. Your palms don't have to sweat. Your voice doesn't have to tremble. You don't have to have a twitchy eye as you're doing it. We want more than that. I would say our aspirations should be higher than that. And I said, for myself, I want to feel good asserting myself. I don't think there's any reason why we can't, if I disagree with somebody, why it shouldn't, in its optimum state, be a win-win scenario where both of us come out of it feeling like, yeah, we got something good from that. If they're determined to make it not optimal, well, that's on them, because they are them and I am me and you are you. And another person's problems are not your problems, and you have the right to live a healthy, sane, happy life. That's one of the affirmations from the CD. These affirmations, actually what they do is they create a whole new belief system that gets installed straight into the unconscious, and I would predict that within 3 to 4 days of listening to that a few times, it's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff. You might find it, as it resonates with stuff in you at the unconscious level, you might find it moving emotionally. Don't run from that. Don't run from being moved emotionally. There are things that you've been clamming up inside of yourself for a long time, that if it releases as an emotion, just let it happen. Don't fight it. Not every bad emotion is taboo. Not every bad emotion is to be suppressed and killed and medicated and numbed out. It's not even a bad emotion. It's just an emotion. It is what it is. So I would predict that within 3 or 4 days of listening to that a couple of times, that you will have an active first-person experience of asserting yourself in ways that you never dreamed that you could before. It will work quickly. It will work quickly, and you'll find yourself doing it. It could be in the workplace. It could be at home. But words will come. This has been my experience in just doing this work. I designed this work for you. I designed this work based on picking one guy as an archetype and going, well, if he's got the problem, tons of Seek by Secret subscribers have the problem, and I've probably got the problem to a degree as well. So I did the work that I offered to him, and it's done wonders for me. I've just found myself just responding in very, very different ways with people who I've had, people very close to me, who I've had problems with for years. And usually the closer people are to me, the more there are problems there, and now it's sorting itself out. Of course, that's turbulent and stressful for them, but that's their problem, not mine. One of the things this course will teach you to do is to have stronger boundaries, much, much firmer boundaries, and just go, look, I'm sorry that it makes you uncomfortable, but you're an adult human being. It's not my job to make you feel good. It's your job to make you feel good. That's another affirmation from the course. So I'm excited about this because of the scope and the scale of what it could represent. I'm excited about this because it could actually really make a huge difference in people's lives, in every area of your life. Improve your relationships, improve like your jobs, how much money you can make. If you've got the ability to say, I'm not putting up with this, I know my worth is this, I need more money, or I'm going to go elsewhere, you'll start making more money. If you know your own worth and you will assert your own worth, it's no different than saying no if somebody's going to try and mug you or attack you than it is saying no and asserting your own self-worth. If somebody wants to attack you or mug you or exploit you or rape you at the psychological and emotional level, you just say no, and that's it. And if you come past that boundary, then I will go to war with you. So that course is available now. Please do leave any feedback or comments you've got in the comment section below. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed this video cast. I'm going to do another one about it tomorrow, because I'm on fire with this stuff at the moment. I'm really, really pleased with this stuff, so I'm dead happy with it. I hope you get as much out of it as I did. Okay, thanks very much for your time and your attention, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you.